Hello all, good afternoon and welcome to yet another live session of Narayana IAS Academy. So as all of you know, this is Sureka Bhaskar here to present you the daily news analysis, and of course for our discussion today, we've picked up very important articles from the Hindu as well as the Indian Express, which become extremely important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. So with no further delay, let us actually kickstart our discussion with a motivation. So what does this motivation behind me say today is that no problem in the world is bigger than the virtue of courage that you actually possess. So you can break every problem, every hurdle or every obstacle that actually comes your way with this one virtue that is called courage in both your mind as well as your body. So this is what is important for us to get or be successful in our aspirations, and for us the mutual aspiration is to qualify this particular examination. So in order to ease your preparation for this particular examination, what the R&D team of the Narayana IAS Academy has brought forth is a 1-year prelims cum mains integrated course for the 2026 examination and a 2-year prelims cum mains integrated course for the 2027 examination. So the entire duration of this particular course will be around 1000 plus hours, where 800 plus hours are exclusively given for your general studies as well as your CSAT, while the remaining 200 plus hours is actually given for your current affairs, so that you actually stay in pace with your preparation as well as your other competitors. Okay. Now, moving forward, this entire program actually is a holistic and a comprehensive program which will prepare you to face all the 3 stages of the examination, be it your preliminary, be it your mains or your interview. Okay. So as a part of this particular program, we also give you strategic micro schedule, which is nothing but a very comprehensively made study plan that optimizes your time and keeps all of you very organized, okay, so that you are not lost in the vast expanse of syllabus that the UPSC actually demands from you. And also, all these classes will be taken up and will be rendered to you by expert faculties who have expertise in these particular domains, as well as those who have actually appeared till the interview stage of the examination. And also, in order to provide you with the feedback of your performances that you've done, we also have a regular testing mechanisms through our test series, where we will actually we will see how you have performed, we will evaluate your performance and finally come back with a personalized feedback, okay, so that you can perform better while compared to that of your previous performances. Okay, so now let us actually move on to look at the topics that we've actually picked up for today's discussion. So the first article has been picked up from page number 11 of the Hindu. Vice President calls for discussion on freebies, policy on efficient use of government investments. Okay, so this particular article has the topic actually suggests the Vice President while addressing the Rajya Sabha. So Vice President is also the chairman of the Rajya Sabha, right? So while addressing the Rajya Sabha, he has actually told that the capital expenditure that the government actually spends, okay, it has to be for the greater good of the society, and too much of the expenditure should actually not go towards these kind of freebies. Okay, what are freebies? These are the goods or services that are provided by the political parties, especially during their election campaigns. Okay, this is mainly done with a political gain approach, okay, where they actually focus on the population in order to garner their votes in order to win in the elections. Okay, so the Vice President actually says that we have to come up with a national policy where the expenditure of the government is proper, it is structured and it is transparent, and not much of it goes into the spending of services like freebies. So this is what the Vice President has actually spoken, and so here we'll be covering this particular topic of freebies. So we will be covering this bigger topic which talks about the freebie culture in India, culture of freebies in India. For that, you need to understand what are freebies and why are they given, then what is the need for freebies, and then what are the arguments for and arguments against these freebies. Okay, and then we will also see certain judicial pronouncements with respect to that of the same, and finally way forward on how the election commission actually has to be empowered in order to regulate the giving away of these particular freebies, and also what are the other regulations like the Representation of People Act actually talk about giving the freebies. Okay, so this is actually going to be your mains topic. So topic for your mains discussion is freebie. Moving on, the second article that we've actually picked up is from the text and context page of the Hindu. What are the different risks and rewards of using UAVs? So what are UAVs? These are unmanned aerial vehicles. Okay, so for example, if you see the drones, okay, so you see the drones, right? The drone show is over there, and then drones are used by the farmers in agricultural purposes for spraying the insecticides as well as the pesticides, and also for delivery of medicines. So these are unmanned aerial vehicles where it actually works on a combination of what, both robotics as well as computers. Okay, it is actually based on technology. Okay, so this is totally different from the very conventional piloted jets. Okay, so this is the concept of unmanned aerial vehicles. So here we'll be discussing about what are these unmanned aerial vehicles, and drone is one kind. What is the application, and whether unmanned aerial vehicles are less harmful when compared to that of the piloted jets or not. What are the applications and what are the arguments against the use of this, and in what way they pose security threat, okay, globally. Because in recent instances you see now, with respect to Iran, with respect to Israel, as well as the Hamas conflict that is actually happening, and also with respect to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we see the drones which are actually involved and which are involved in the transformation of warfare. So here we need to see what is the concept of UAVs and what are the significance as well as the arguments against it. Now, also we will see what are some of the UAVs that are used by the Indian Armed Forces, okay, and for what purposes are they used. So this is actually going to be your prelims article. Moving forward, the third article has also been picked up from the Hindu, that is page number 9 of the Hindu. Torture shadows India's justice system. So this particular article is actually discussed in, I think, your opinion page of the Hindu, where they talk about the custodial deaths. Okay, the custodial deaths. So India has actually seen an alarming increase in the number of custodial deaths that are actually happening. What do you mean by custodial death? A person who is actually accused of an offense is treated very badly, okay, in the prison by the police officers. So this is called as custodial torture and custodial death. In light of that, we will be discussing about a UN convention against torture, that is called as UNCAT, and India has actually signed this particular convention, but it finds it difficult to ratify it. So there's a difference between signing a particular convention and ratifying it. So here we will be looking at the difference, and particularly we will be discussing about this United Nations Convention against torture. Okay, now moving forward, the last article for discussion will be Telecom Tribunal reforms to handle data protection, please. So this particular article has been picked up from page number 8 of the Hindu, and here we will be talking about the Telecom Tribunal. Okay, so we look into what this tribunal is and what are the major functions of this tribunal, because in the light of the recent Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023 as well as the Digital Protection Rules of 2025, what happens, a lot of data protection topic has actually been in the news, right? So when there are any kind of appeals against the telecom services, what happens, the telecom service provider as well as the customer can actually appeal to this particular tribunal. And also the Digital Data Protection Act of 2023 actually gives a lot of power to this tribunal, yet the tribunal faces a number of challenges with respect to that of the technology, with respect to that of the e-filing of the cases, then cases overload, because this is actually designed in such a way where it has a very limited capacity. So all that we will actually be discussing here. Okay, so this will also be your prelims article, and finally we will be solving a mains practice questions, okay, with the approach answer, and then we will solve 3 MCQs that were actually discussed as a part of yesterday's DNA. Now let us quickly move forward to the very first topic of the day, that is Vice President calls for discussion on the freebies policy on efficient use of government investments. So over here, we will be discussing about the freebie culture in India, very, very important. And also, it is a part of electoral politics. So this particular topic becomes very, very important for both your prelims and specifically your mains under GS paper 2. Just give me a minute. Yeah, under GS paper 2, salient features of the Representation of People Act, that is the RPA, as well as GS paper 3, mobilization of resources or allocation of resources, whatever we see. Now, moving forward, there has been a PYQ that has been asked in the year 2017 in the mains examination with respect to the simultaneous elections between the Lok Sabha as well as the state assemblies, and in what way will it limit the amount of time and money spent in the electioneering, that is the election campaign or in the process of election, and whether it will actually reduce the government's accountability to the people. Discuss. Okay, so this has been asked in your 2017 examination. So this entire topic of elections become important. So what are the constitutional provisions and what is the age for franchise in India, and also what are the different dimensions or the fields in which electoral reforms were actually carried out, and India being one of the largest political democracies, what do you mean by registered parties and unregistered parties, what do you mean by national party, etc. And also we will be talking about this one, okay, that is simultaneous elections that was asked in your previous examination. And finally, today we will be discussing about this particular concept of freebies that is actually provided during your election campaigns. Okay, so now let us get to understand what this topic is all about. So while addressing the Rajya Sabha, the Vice President of India, who's the Vice President of India? Mr. Jagdeep Dhankhar. Okay, so he actually raised concerns over the arising or the increasing trends of freebie culture in India. Yes, of course, even by the recent RBI reports, if you see, there has been increasing instances where the states like Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, etc. actually provide a lot of freebies that cause a lot of strain on the fiscal health of the state, okay, and thereby it also affects the economic development. Let's see how. So instead of giving out a lot of freebies, he called out a formulation of national policy where the government expenditures are utilized in a transparent as well as a structured manner for the interest of the public. So this is why this particular article is in the news. Now moving forward, let us understand what are freebies. Okay, so as I told you, these are goods and services that are provided by the political parties, whom they give these goods and services to, of course to the voters, in order to attract them in you know and casting their vote for them. So that is why they actually attract or entice them. Okay, so these are goods and services which are provided to the political parties, given by the political parties to the voters. And this is mainly done during the election campaigns without any direct payment required from the beneficiary. For example, a political party is actually giving me some goods or the service. I need not pay them anything back in return. Okay, so I am the beneficiary here, so I need not give them any money. For example, it can be free electricity, it can be free water, etc. And or it can also be cash incentives that is actually given, or in form of any kind of consumer goods like rice, sugar, dal, whatever it is. So why this is done? It is done for electoral support, and now it has actually sparked a lot of discussions about the economic, the social as well as the ethical implications that it will actually leave in the society. Okay, so this is what is the debate right now. Now let's move forward in understanding what and how much do states actually spend on these particular freebies. If you see, according to estimates, around 0.1 to 2.7% of the gross state domestic product, that is the GSDP, like the GDP. GDP is actually what? The measure of the national income of the country, right? Whereas the gross state domestic product is the measure of the economic activities or the value of it that actually happens in the state. So as a percentage of GSDP, if you see, the freebies account for 0.1 to 2.7% for different states. And it has also exceeded 2%, okay, in many states like Andhra Pradesh as well as Punjab. And as I already told you, according to the recent RBI reports, states like, if you see, Jharkhand, Kerala, Odisha, Telangana as well as UP, these are the top 5 states which are largest in freebies for the past 3 years, okay. So if you look at this particular table here, let me actually zoom it for you. Yeah, if you actually see here, the freebies that have been announced by different states in the year 2022-2023, the first one you see is Andhra Pradesh. As a percentage of their state gross domestic product, it is 2.1%, where it is followed by other states. You can see Punjab, it is 2.7%, and then if you see, it is 1.7% for Jharkhand, it is 1.1% for West Bengal, and so on. If you see, as a percentage of the revenue receipts that the states actually receive, it is 14.1, followed by 8%, 10.8%, 17.8%, etc. And when compared to the total amount of tax revenues that the states actually get, these freebies account for 30.3% in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and that is actually followed by, number one, if you see Punjab, it has actually crossed 45%, and then you have 28% Madhya Pradesh, and so on, okay. This data is not important, however, this particular concept of freebie culture is very, very important, okay. So this is what is the concept of freebie and how it is actually given by different states in India, and what is the percentage it actually accounts for the total gross state domestic product, okay. Now moving forward, let us see legal provisions with respect to freebies. Is there any particular act that regulates the distribution of freebies by the political parties during the, keeping the freebie distribution as part of their manifesto or during their electoral campaigns during elections? So is there a particular law that regulates it or restricts it? No, India does not have any kind of a legal framework. However, there are other regulations that are actually brought in place in order to scrutinize this particular process of distribution. So what are they? Number one is Representation of People Act 1951. Okay. So let us actually see what is this 1951 RPA. So this governs the conduct of elections in India, and specifically if you see section 123 of the RPA Act, this actually outlines the concept of corrupt practices. Okay. So what do you mean by corrupt practices? It can either be bribery, or it can either be the undue influence that a political party or a political party member actually has on the voter. So what do you mean by bribery? According to section 171B of this particular act, if you offer any kind of gratification or any kind of goods or services in order to induce a person to vote for you or to refrain from voting for the opposition party, that is resulting in what is called as bribery. Next one is undue influence. That is, if you exert any kind of pressure on the voters to vote in a particular manner, then that is also bribery. So here explicitly it is not mentioning, however the meaning is implicit, okay. However, here actually steps in the Supreme Court of India. Supreme Court of India actually says that freebies will influence the voters and may amount to bribery or undue influence. However, there is no explicit law, right? And also, the Supreme Court in this particular case, Subramaniam Balaji versus State of Tamil Nadu in 2019, said that distributing freebies will actually impact the fairness of the election process in India. Okay, so these are some of the legal provisions. And now, very important is, what is the reason for increased or escalation in the amount of freebie distribution year by year in India? What motivates the political parties to do this is what we need to understand. Okay. So here, if you're not able to see, let me zoom in. Yeah. The first point is intense political competition. You know, right? India actually in its the democracy, if you see, there are a number of political parties that are actually competing with each other. Even the actors and actresses actually jump into politics after a particular point of growth in their career. So one reason is intense political competition. Okay, so in the landscape of Indian politics, the political parties compete with each other, and they need to, in that process, they need to seek attention from the voters. So that is one of the important reasons behind the political parties distributing their freebies, so that they can stand distinguished or apart from the other political parties. Next one, short term popularity. So when you give freebies, it actually gives them, you know if you give them if you give the gratification to the people, what happens is that you are popular. Okay, you are a popular political party or a leader that people will actually remember by. Next one is attracting the voters. We know that, right? It actually serves as an effective means in order to, I'm sorry, in order to attract the voters, especially in the regions where even essential goods or necessary commodities are short in supply. So that way you will actually be giving them a lot of benefits, okay, through freebies. That is this one. Next one is economic growth argument. So some people actually argue freebies are not only negative in nature, but they also give you economic growth. How? Because when freebies are given to, what to say, unreserved, given to unreserved or underserved people, what happens? This actually, it can be even influencing their food security or providing them the employment, etc. This will increase their productivity in whatever work they are doing. When that productivity increases in the economy, or the participation in the economic activities actually increase, what happens? There is definitely economic growth. Okay, so this is what here it is actually told. Now moving forward, let us actually see what are the next one. The last one is social welfare argument. Obviously, when you are actually giving employment to the people, or when you are giving some goods to the people who are actually having no access to these basic needs, what happens? You are actually doing for the social welfare, okay, as well as development. So this is what it actually says. It can be either in terms of food or education or health or whatever it is. Okay, so now we are done with this. Let us actually move to the next slide. Yeah. So here, what are some of the arguments in favor of the freebies? Because it actually provides targeted support, right? Because a specific group are targeted where growth and development actually happens there. Then there is fulfilling constitutional obligations, okay? Whether in terms of food security, health, employment, education, these are all things that are mentioned in the constitution, that is in the directive principles of state policy. So you need to read Article 40. So next one, enhance the electoral competition. So this further encourages the parties to address the voters' concerns proactively. Okay, so there will be better governance in India. So this is what are the arguments for or towards or supporting freebies. What are the arguments against the freebies? First one, there is dependency syndrome. Okay, when you constantly commit or you promise of giving the freebies, there will be significant dependent on the voter population on a political party. So this will further discourage them to perform more proactively and productively in the society. So this is one. Next one, for example, when they had actually given a lot of free electricity and free water or irrigation to Punjab, what had been the repercussion? So that is one such example. Okay, so this also reduces the responsibility of the beneficiaries, because they'll think anyways we're giving it for free only. Why should we actually do it with full will? So that will be the problem. Next one, there will be fiscal strain. That is, there will be pressure on the fiscal health of the states, of the country at large. Specifically, we are experiencing such things in Kerala, in the state of Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, etc. So when there is increased public expenditure, what happens? The subsidies, when there is expenditure, means what? Government is actually spending on giving you subsidies. So when the expenditure is more than the revenue, then what happens? It actually results in deficit. And also there are other causes like inflation, where there will be gradual increase in the price of money. When there is too much supply of money in the economy, then what happens? There will be a gradual increase in the general price level of goods and services, which you term as inflation. So these are some of the arguments against. And next argument is that there will be misallocation of resources. Definitely, rather than focusing on critical, sectors like infrastructure, like agriculture, industry, what happens? There is significant amount of money that is going towards providing freebies. Okay, so this hinders the overall economic development. Next one, there is environmental impact. So offering goods or services for free will encourage the use of anything that is given for free has no value, right? So that is over consumed. So what happens? There is excessive use or wastage of the natural resources, and this also causes an environmental strain, okay, be it water or be it energy resources. Okay, I gave you Punjab as an example, right, where there was overuse or wastage of water as well as electricity, that is power. So these are also few of the arguments. Now, what has the Supreme Court actually say? So Supreme Court in this S. Subramaniam Balaji versus Government of Tamil Nadu in 2013, it says that Election Commission should be given the authority in order to review the MCC. Okay, review and advise the MCC. MCC is nothing but your model code of conduct that actually gets implemented before your elections. Okay, so Election Commission should actually lay down strict guidelines by revising the MCC. Okay, that is why Election Commission actually came up with guidelines where the political parties actually were including this particular freebies in their manifesto. But MCC does not have the force of law. This is very, very important. And also the Supreme Court actually said, now you guys can actually establish an expert committee where the committee has members from the Niti Aayog as well as other financial institutions like the central bank, that is the RBI, the Finance Commission and other stakeholders, and they have to come up with a very comprehensive study on the impact of freebie on the finances of the democracy and also provide recommendations on the same in controlling the distribution of freebies. But so far no such committee has actually been implemented or formed by the government. Okay, now let's move to the next one. Here we need to know what is the difference or the dichotomy between the freebies as well as welfare mechanisms, because you can see anyways freebies, when they are actually given by the political party, of course it is for the welfare of the people, but whether it is actually sustainable, whether it is for a long term, and what is the objective behind it. Okay, so and also what is the purpose or the intent behind giving the freebies as well as the welfare mechanisms, and also what is the nature, whether it is very shortly planned for your electoral gains or whether you're doing for the overall development to the benefit of the society. All that becomes important. So if you see, freebies is the place where goods and services are provided for free of charge, of course, but whereas if you see welfare mechanisms, these are well thought of approaches that the government comes up with in order to benefit the entire society as a whole. The next one, what is the aim of it, is that the freebies are a short-term benefit to the targeted population, whether this is actually a long-term improvement in the living standard of the people, which actually gives them better quality of life. Next one, the motivation is, it is by, definitely the political motives. You have to win your election, so that you need to garner support from the maximum of voters. This is why it is, but this is actually driven by constitutional obligations. Next one, the purpose is, here you lure the, that is you actually attract the voters or make populist promises, okay, as a part of your election manifesto. But here you promote social justice as well as human development. Examples of freebies include free laptops, TVs, bicycles, electricity, etc. Specifically, you can see in the state of Tamil Nadu. And here you can see the welfare mechanisms have a broader dimension, such as the public distribution system, the midday meal scheme, as well as the MGNREGS, as well as other welfare schemes that are brought about by the government. Okay, so this is the difference between freebies as well as the welfare mechanisms. So finally, what is the way forward? Having looked into what are freebies, okay, so these are goods and services that are given, not expecting anything in return except for votes. And then why is freebie needed in India, and why has there been an increase in the freebie culture in India? Also, we saw the arguments for freebies, because they Also, what to say, satisfy certain constitutional obligations such as the DPSP, your nutritional security is taken care of, employment is provided, health, education are focused on, and also what are the arguments for or against the freebies. And finally, we have discussed about what is the difference between freebie, what is the motive, as well as what are the welfare schemes. And we also saw whether there are proper regulations in India in order to control the freebies. But no, we have only the Representation of People Act of 1951 talk about what? Talk about bribery or the undue influence, okay? But we do not have it in explicitly, we do not have it mentioned anywhere. And also now, in order to solve all this, what should be the way forward? Of course, there has to be a transparent, rational and financial disclosure. This is nothing but all the political parties, whenever they include this freebie distribution as a part of their manifesto, they have to disclose the entire amount of expenditure they make for this particular freebie, whether it is the source of fund, whether it is the fiscal implications, the sustainability of freebies, and what is the percentage of it with respect to the gross state domestic product, etc., is what the states have to declare. Next one, empowerment of the Election Commission. So, Election Commission actually have to regulate and oversee the distribution of freebies by the political parties. So, this also includes imposition of penalties in case any political party violates it. Next one, voter education and awareness. Of course, the voters have to know what are the economic, social as well as the ethical consequences that the freebies can, bring across, whether it is short term, whether it is long term, whether it is actually increasing your standard of life, the quality of your living. All that the voters actually have to know. And in turn, the voters also have to demand the performance and accountability from the political parties. So, these are the way forwards in order to control. And finally, you need to emphasize on inclusive development rather than just focusing on the welfare of the people only during the period of elections. We need to follow an approach of inclusive development, okay? So we need to basically address the root causes rather than bringing out something very temporarily to alleviate poverty. So what are the root causes of suffering in India? We actually have poverty. We do not have equal representation of the vulnerable sections of the society. So all that actually have to be curbed, and the inclusive development must actually be focused on, okay? So these are the different way forwards, okay? So now, having discussed a very important and a bigger topic, that is freebies, now let us actually discuss what are the different risks and rewards using UAVs. What do you mean by UAVs? UAVs actually stand for the Unmanned Aerial Vehicles, okay? So these are vehicles that are actually operated remotely, and you do not have a pilot actually operating it, sitting on it and flying it, okay? So that does not. And also UAVs transforming the warfare. For example, you have the Russia Ukraine conflict, and also we notice a lot of Pakistan UAVs in the Indo-Pakistan border, specifically in Punjab, in order to deliver drugs, okay? So all that is actually happening. So this becomes an important part for both prelims, that is important, current events of national and international importance. And for your mains exam, it actually comes under GS paper 3, security challenges and their management in the border areas, okay? So this is what it is. Now, let us move forward and see a PYQ. Okay, so in 2016, there was a PYQ with respect to Astra Dharini. So, these kind of warships or submarines, or whether they are recovery vessels or aircraft carriers, all these actually become very important, specifically with respect to the launches that actually take place in India. Okay, so you need to know about this. So this question was asked in the 2016 prelims examination, and now let us quickly understand why this article was actually in the news, okay? So the context here is that recently actually Japan had noticed two Chinese drones which were actually flying over the Indo-Pacific region. That is, recently we have two Chinese drones which were spotted flying over the waters near Okinawa. So this is actually a place in Japan. Okay. So this indicates the potential threat that the unmanned aerial vehicles actually have or could pose on the global security. So this is what is called as a it is called as UAV, and why this particular topic is in the news. So what are drones? Drones are UAVs, right? So you need to understand drones and UAVs. All drones are UAVs, but all UAVs are not drones. Okay, so anything which is unmanned, which is controlled by remote operations, which actually combines both aeronautics as well as the robotics. So these are actually called as what? Unmanned aerial vehicles, and these are one subsection of that is called as the drones, and we will be discussing about the same here. What are drones? These are small or medium sized unmanned aerial vehicles which are remotely controlled to or fly autonomously. They can either be autonomous or they are remotely controlled. Okay, and they actually combine this field or the technology of robotics as well as aeronautics. Okay, so that they can maintain a control level of flight. They come in different sizes. Okay, that is, they can be used for consumer models also, like for example ones used by the farmers, or ones which is actually used to monitor the quality of the soil or to take the images. All that is one kind of a drone, or to capture wildlife. Whereas on the other side, it is designed for large industrial purposes also, like grade machines. The global commercial drone market was actually around 18, or you can say 20 billion US dollars in 2022, and this is going to have a compounded annual growth rate of around 14% from 2023 to 2030. Okay, now let us actually move forward in seeing how the drones are actually, or the UAVs, the unmanned aerial vehicles, when compared to that of the fighter jets which are piloted, that the pilots sit on and operate, whether the UAVs are less harmful when compared to that of the jets. Yes, of course they are. Why? Because they are less powerful when compared to that of the jets, and the capability or the capacity is very low, because they are mainly used for what? The surveillance purposes. So that is why. So UAVs are unarmed and they are used for intelligence gathering, and there is no human on board. Okay, and next one is lower cost as well as the risks comparatively. Okay, so this actually, that is, the fighter jets actually incurs a significant amount of expenditure, whereas the drones, it is not for that particular purpose. Excuse me. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, here if you see, let us see what are all the applications of the drones in various sectors. Okay, so the first one is agriculture. So definitely, as I told you, it is actually used for monitoring the health of the crops as well as the soil, and also it can actually see what is the quality and the amount of irrigation that actually goes, and then whether there are locust pest infestations in a particular crop or not, and finally estimating the crop output. So drones are used in agriculture for these many purposes. Next one. So this can be a part of technology. There was a NITI Aayog report that said role of technology in agriculture. Okay. So here you can mention this as the example. Next one, medicine. In the field of medicine, it is actually used for delivering the medicines and also for collecting the samples, like the blood samples as well as the excretory samples of the human beings, okay, from remote areas. Next one, in terms of administration, how it is actually useful. Definitely updating the land records or any kind of urban land management or urban planning. Then, to monitor the status of the construction projects that are actually coming up in the areas, and also preventing the process of encroachment. Now moving forward, defense and security. Of course, this is for surveillance, okay. They send it across very strategic regions to see what is the development. India can actually send across the Indo-Chinese border to see whether there is incursion of the Chinese into the territory of India, or whether there is a construction of dam or anything. Okay, so that is why. And also it facilitates the remote communication and counter the drone solutions and protecting the sensitive installations. Next one, environmental monitoring. So definitely it is used to monitor the movement of the wildlife, okay, population, and also monitor if there is any kind of deforestation that is actually taking place, okay, in order to bring up industrialization or urbanization. Next one, to observe any kind of change in the ecosystem. Last one is media and entertainment. Of course, to capture, if you see the weddings and all these days, these drones are actually there, right? The photographers actually send it to you on the stage. So this is actually for videography and for coverage, and also shooting at low altitude without noise and filming in very difficult to reach terrains. Okay, so this is where the drones are actually used, that is the unmanned aerial vehicles. Next one, what are the security threats? Of course, there are surveillance issues, okay, because they are actually there are unauthorized surveillance that actually happen over here, and intelligence gathering that is taking place without the permission. Okay, example is, since 2019 the number of drones that were seized were around 100, and also around 600 drone sightings were actually there, specifically in the Indo-Pak border. Next one, the airspace violations. By sending the drones, we are violating the airspace policy. For example, the intrusion of Pakistan drone into the Indian airspace, this actually took place in February 2019. Next one, there is terrorism. So terrorists actually make use of these drones in order to cause attacks. Okay, attacks means it can either be through explosives, or they can spread the chemicals also, or there is actually radiological agents which in the populated areas or in the strategic areas. For example, there has been an attack on the Indian Air Force base in Jammu in 2021, okay, where there was actually the drones were used to drop the explosives. Okay, now moving forward, next one is smuggling. Of course, I told you the Indo-Pakistan border, specifically if you see the regions of Punjab, where there are drugs as well as contraband goods. What does that mean? These are the goods that are actually imported from other countries, and these are illegal, but these are actually supplied to the prisons, etc., or to the population in the border areas with the drugs as well as the weapons. Okay, this has also had been noticed from Pakistan. Okay, so here the challenges in tackling the drone threats. Okay, what are the challenges? First one, easy accessibility and availability. Of course, it is easy. Next one, technological advancements such as stealth features and encryption are also there. The next one, compact size and high maneuverability, because it is only of a smaller size, right? They have like this and they just keep going somewhere. So here it is not even visible sometimes. So it is easily maneuverable. It is not like a jet which actually appears massive in the sky. Next one, legal and regulatory challenges are there, because as such there are no proper legal or proper frameworks that is actually brought about by India in order to monitor and regulate the same. Next one, there are also cyber security threats. Okay, what are cyber security threats? Here, this drone warfare can also lead to the theft of a lot of data of the citizens. Okay, so there can be unauthorized control, if you see, and finally, it can actually lead to the psychological warfare. Because of this, it can always keep the population in a constant state of threat or the fear or feeling of being constantly watched. Okay, so this is what the security that is emanating from the drones. This is very, very important. These are the key drones or the UAV systems which are actually used by the Indian Armed Forces. Just know the name. First one is the Rustam series. This Rustam series is nothing but it is a series of drones that have been developed by the Defense Research Organization, that is the DRDO. And then it is nothing but it is a male class UAV. What do you mean by male class? It is nothing but a medium altitude long endurance class. Medium altitude long endurance. Okay, so this is male class and it has an endurance of around 12 to 15 hours, and it can actually fly at an altitude of about 25,000 feet, and its payload capacity is around 75 kgs. And if you see Rustam 2, it can fly at a maximum speed of 225 kilometers per hour and endure for 24 hours. So sometimes some of these can actually be asked in the exam. It is whether developed by ISRO, it is developed by Defense Research Organization, okay, and Development Organization, whether it is the DRDO or whether it is the HAL, and whether it is actually an agreement, it is made by the agreement, or whether it is imported from any other country. All that can actually be asked. The next one is Tapas BH201. It is a tactical aerial platform that is used for surveillance beyond horizon 201. This is what is the name. Next one, it's an upgraded version of this particular Rustam. They can also ask an upgraded version of the Rustam is which of the following: Netra, the Bharat series, or whether it is the Tapas BH. Okay, so it is actually used for the intelligence, it is used for surveillance as well as target acquisition, etc. Okay, next one, the capabilities is that it can actually fly at an altitude of 30,000 feet and it has an endurance of 24 hours. It is constantly flying for 24 hours. Netra, this is a lightweight autonomous, it's kind of an helicopter based UAV. This is also developed by this DRDO and Idea Forge, and this is actually used by the Indian Army, same for the purpose of surveillance as well as reconnaissance missions. Next one, the Bharat series. This is under development again by the DRDO and it is actually used for the training purposes and specific surveillance. Okay, so this is what it is. Now moving forward, let us see what are the others. Next one is the Heron. This is from Israel Aerospace Industry. So this is not indigenous, okay? Heron from Israel. And this is also medium altitude. We saw, right? Medium altitude. What was it? Even I forgot. Yeah, medium altitude, long endurance. Yeah, medium altitude, long endurance class UAV. And long endurance, that is what I told you, for the same surveillance purposes. Followed by that, you have the Searcher. This is also from the Israel Aerospace. And finally, you have the MQ-9 Reaper or Predator B. This is actually acquired from the US, that is the General Atomics, and it has an endurance of about 27 hours and can operate up to 50,000 feet, and it has a payload capacity of around 1800 kilograms. Okay, so very powerful and primarily used by the Indian Navy for maritime surveillance. Okay, so here we've actually completed the topic of UAVs, that is unmanned aerial vehicles. Now let's quickly see torture shadows India's justice system. So here the topic is about custodial torture, that is increasing custodial torture in India, and what is the convention we actually have to tackle the same, that is the United Nations Convention Against Torture, whether we have signed it or whether we have ratified it or whether we have done both or we have done neither. This is what we'll have to understand, and also what is this particular convention, what are the provisions and what are the earlier recommendations with respect to that of the custodial torture that other committees as well as the reports, etc., have actually given, is what we will see. So UNCAT important, and it is important for both the prelims as well as the mains examination under important international institution agencies, therefore are the structure and the mandate. Okay, now let's move forward. In 2019 there was a question with respect to UNCAC, that is the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. So these kind of UN agencies as well as the conventions can actually be asked, whether whatever the convention actually comes up with, whether it is binding on the countries or not. If they don't follow that, what is an alternative? Who are the members? Whether India has signed it, ratified it, all that can be asked in the examination. Now moving forward, let us actually see why this particular article has been in the news. Okay, so India's non-ratification of UNCAT. What is non-ratification? Signing is nothing but you can sign any convention saying that okay, I support this particular convention for this particular cause. Okay, but ratifying it is that correspondingly you need to take measures to bring a law in your country. So that is what is called as ratification. India has signed it, but it has not ratified this particular United Nations Convention Against Torture. So this is why in the news, because of increasing incidents of custodial torture in India across the states, specifically in the state of Tamil Nadu. Okay. So now let us see what is UNCAT. So the full form is United Nations Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, UNCAT. So this is an international human rights treaty. When was it adopted? In the year 1984. When it came into enforcement, 1987. What is the objective? Of course, in order to prevent any kind of torture or any kind of inhumane activities or degrading treatment by the state authorities globally. Also, they have to hold the individuals accountable for the acts of torture and also provide protection, redress, as well as rehabilitation to the victims. Okay, so this is what is United Nations Convention against torture. Next one, what are the key features? This actually gives, there are a number of articles. Okay, so article 1, 2, 3, all that is not important, but let's see what is the definition of torture given by article 1 of this particular convention. So any kind of physical or mental pain intentionally inflicted by the public officials for the purposes of punishment or for the purpose of coercion or discrimination, it is actually called as torture according to article 1. Article 2 says the states must take effective legislative, administrative and judicial steps to prevent such torture, and Article 3 of this convention prohibits the extradition. What do you mean by extradition? If the person who has committed the mistake is in country A, let us say he or she is in India, and when the crime committed is against the another country, that is the United States, what happens? There will be extradition. They will call for this particular accused from India over here. But in case if India feels that if I send my citizen to this country, there is going to be even excessive torture, then what happens? It can also say no, we cannot send. Okay, so it prohibits extradition in case if they think there is a risk of torture in the receiving country. So this is what it is. And there is also an optional protocol, that is nothing but OPCAT. This is nothing but it establishes a regular inspection of detention centers, okay, in order to see that this particular habit of torture is actually not happening anywhere. Okay, next one. So what are the anti-torture provisions in India? So India, again, it does not have any kind of a particular torture, any kind of particular law against anti-torture, but there are the constitutional as well as the legal provisions or legal protections. Okay, so let us see what are few of the constitutional protections as well as the legal safeguards. Okay, so the first one, of course, is about the fundamental right. It is Article 21 of the Constitution, which protects right to life and personal liberty, which is interpreted to include freedom from torture. Next one, Article 20, Clause 3. This is protection against self-incrimination, that is standing as an evidence or witness against yourself. So this is what which is relevant to forced confessions. The police people cannot force you to confess against this particular crime. Next one, Article 22. So this actually provides rights for the people who are arrested. Okay, so production before the magistrate of these kind of people is mandatory within 24 hours of time. The next one, Article 51, Clause C, where this is actually a directive principle. Then this calls for the respect for international treaties, and here the international treaty is UNCAT. Okay. Now moving forward, let us see some of the legal safeguards. Of course, this is definitely the IPC, that is right now it is called the BNS, the BNSS and all. So here under IPC sections 330 and 31, then you have IPC section 302, then you have CRPC, that is Code of Criminal Procedure. So all that deals with the provisions like punish causing hurt to extract confession or information is punishable according to IPC. Again, murder charge applicable in case of you commit a death of the person who is under arrest. And CRPC section 167 and 176 talks about mandatory judicial inquiry of the custodial deaths or the rapes. And finally, Indian Evidence Act, okay, section 24. This actually confessions under coercion and inducements are inadmissible. Very, very important. And finally, protection of human rights. Okay. So this establishes NHRC, that is nothing but the National Human Rights Commission, in order to oversee this particular human rights violation in India. Okay. Now, let us actually move forward and see why India has failed or it is reluctant in order to ratify this particular convention. Okay. So India signed this convention when it came into force, that is in 1997. 1987 it came into force, and after a decade India signed this convention. But why it hasn't ratified yet? Because up until now there is no particular comprehensive anti-torture law in India. Okay, so that is why India hesitates, and also there are various reasons for non-ratification, because this UNCAT is actually signed by other countries which have authoritarian rule. India being a democracy, if it signs it, is definitely being going to be a blow to its public image, is what they are saying. And also there will be political hesitation to actually bring this forward, because it brings the politicians, that is, who are going to make this law, versus the police, who are actually taking care of the law and order in the state or the country. And also, as I told you, there is lack of consensus also, okay, regarding this proposed legislation. So let's quickly see. India signed it in 1997 but hasn't ratified it because there is no comprehensive anti-torture law. Why? What are the reasons? Because there is absence of domestic anti-torture legislation that is aligned to UNCAT, and also political hesitation and the implications that it actually thinks that it will come up with the police, the military and the law enforcement functioning, and there is lack of consensus in the parliament regarding the same, and finally the concerns over political misuse against the law enforcement personnel. Okay, so this is why India has not signed. Because of this, what is the impact? It is grouped with authoritarian regimes, I told you, right? Also, there are authoritarian regimes like Sudan and Angola. Along with it, India being placed, of course, it's actually going to be a blow to India. Okay, and also it will weaken India's position as a human right respecting democracy. Do you understand? So this is what it is. So now, moving forward, what are the past recommendations in order to bring out an anti-torture legislation? So the first one, of course, is Prevention of Torture Bill 2010, which was passed by the Lok Sabha and it got lapsed in the Rajya Sabha. So this actually aimed to criminalize the torture comprehensively. Next one, Rajya Sabha Select Committee in 2010, they actually suggested the improvements in the Prevention of Torture Bill, emphasize stronger safeguards. Okay. Next one, Law Commission in its 273rd report 2017, this also drafted Prevention of Torture Bill and urged urgent need in order to ratify the UNCAT, but still it is not there. And finally, you have the NHRC, that is the National Human Rights Commission. This repeatedly advocated for a standalone anti-torture law, against the stronger custodial oversight as well, oversight mechanisms. Okay. Now, moving forward, what are the Supreme Court cases? So, all these are very important. First one is First one, D.K. Basu versus State of West Bengal, 1997. So, here the Supreme Court laid down 11 guidelines for arrest procedures in order to prevent the custodial torture. Next one, Joginder Kumar versus State of UP, 1994, where arrest should not be routine. It emphasized the necessity for the legal safeguards. Next one, Puttaswamy case, 2016. This actually, the court recognized the right to privacy and dignity under Article 21 of the Constitution, where custodial torture will also be against this particular fundamental right. Next one, Nambi Narayan case, 2018. This actually, the Supreme Court awarded compensation for wrongful arrest, and it actually reinforced the accountability of the state to the citizens. Next one, Ashwini Kumar case, 2019, the Supreme Court acknowledged torture concerns but refused to compel the government to enact the anti-torture law. Okay, so this is what these are some of the Supreme Court cases on torture. Now moving forward, the last article for discussion, it's very easy. Here, it is Telecom Tribunal reforms to handle data protection, please. So here it is talking about, one minute, it's talking about the Telecom Tribunal. Okay, so here itself it says that it was a tribunal that was established in order to protect the telecom service providers as well as the customers, and any plea they have, they can go to this particular tribunal. So the structure or the intent with which it was actually formulated or brought into existence was majorly to deal with the telecom cases. Okay, but now what happens? The digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023 gives it power also to hear the appeals, okay, when there is a breach of data protection, etc. But then here it actually lacks, this particular tribunal lacks the infrastructure. It does not have the technology. It is also having a very, very limited capacity, and also it lacks expertise in data protection, whereas it has expertise only towards the telecom related services or telecom related concerns. This is what it is. So this particular topic becomes very, very important for both the prelims as well as the mains examination under GS paper 2, that is government policies and interventions for development in various sectors and issues arising out of the design and implementation. Now, let's move forward. There has been a previous year question in the year 2020. So, which of the following adopted a law on data protection and privacy for its citizens known as the GDPR, that is the General Data Protection Regulation, whether it is the European Union, US, Australia or Canada. Very, very important concept. Okay. So, now let us quickly move forward to see why this particular article is in the news. Of course, since the Digital Data Protection Act of 2023 came into existence and this data protection rules came into 2025, the digital protection or the digital governance is becoming very, very critical. Okay, so this act proposes the appeals from the Data Protection Board heard by, so this is what the act is actually saying, any kind of appeal from the Data Protection Board against a possible breach of data protection, etc., they can be heard by the Telecom Dispute Settlements and Appellate Tribunal. That I told you why it was actually set up, right? Now moving forward, the Digital Data Protection Bill. What is the aim? Of course, in order to safeguard the personal data of the individuals, in order to establish the accountability for processing the entities and the this is what I told you, in order to establish accountability for the data processing entity, whichever entity is actually concerned with data processing, then they have to establish accountability for such entities, okay, and also to boost India's digital trust and the economy. Now let us actually move forward and see what are the features. Of course, right to data protection, that is individuals have the right to actually access, to correct as well as erase the personal data. Next one, data processing, and the consent is very, very important because it requires informed as well as explicit consent which has to be taken from the data processing. Data localization, that is very, very sensitive data should be stored and processed within India, and the regulatory authority is actually set up. Here it is the Data Protection Board of India for compliance and grievance redressal. And then data breach notification, that is organizations must actually notify the concerned individuals and this particular Data Protection Board of India about the data breaches. And finally, fines and penalties. Here there is actually implementation of very, very strict penalties in order to ensure adherence to the data protection standards. So this is what is the Data Protection Act as well as their provisions. Now let's deal with the Digital Data Protection Rules of 2025. The rules are designed to safeguard the citizens' personal data, enable the data transfer, erasure, that is if you want to erase or transfer the data, and user-centric digital rights, and also to promote the transparency, the accountability and the compliance. And these rules actually make or operationalize the Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023. Okay, so here we've seen about the act and also about the rules of 2025. Here, however, you saw, right, the digital board, any kind of the pleas to it shall be heard by this particular tribunal, but the tribunal lacks expertise in data protection because primarily it adheres to the telecom disputes under the TRI Act of 1997, and it actually does not deal with complex privacy issues like consent, data access, storage, transfer, misuse, etc. And also section 14C of this particular TRI Act have to be amended in case you need to include a technical member with expertise in protection of laws. Okay, so this is what it is. Next one, what is the next one? First I told you it does not have expertise. The second one is there is a lot of burden of pending cases. If you see with the tribunal itself, around 3,500 cases are pending. Okay, plus it actually as of 2020 to 2025, if you see between this period, and on top of this they actually have to handle the appeals under the Telecommunications Act also. Also, this lacks judicial members. This is very difficult to meet the 6 months deadline. Okay. Next one, need for budget allocation as well as the additional benches in order to what to say, handle the increasing number of cases. So all this is also there. The next one, if you see, it's a need for digital infrastructure development. All the appeals must be filled digitally only. But if you see the infrastructure, okay, or the legal case management that was developed for this purpose in 2023, this lacks clarity, and also no modernized digital platform. So these are certain troubles, that is the challenges that is faced by this particular tribunal. So what are the proposed institutional reforms? First one is appoint a technical member. So even for this, section 14C of TRI Act actually has to be amended, which is going to be a very long process, right? So include a data protection expert. Let's see. Next one, expand the tribunal capacity, okay, in case of budget, in case of the judicial appointments, the benches, etc. Next, improve the digital infrastructure. That is, you have to upgrade the website of this particular tribunal and also enhance easier e-filling of the systems, and then improve the case tracking, and finally ensure accountability. That is, anywhere you need to, for ensuring accountability, you need to come up with the annual report. So similarly, you come up with the annual reports on the efficiency and the performance of this particular tribunal is what this particular article says. Okay. With this, we've actually completed all the 4 articles. Let us actually see the main practice question. The question reads, the rising trend of freebies in electoral politics is a concern for free and fair elections. So critically examine the statement, and this is a 10 marker. So here we will start with the introduction. So what do you mean by freebies in political process? These are goods and services offered by the parties not expecting anything in return except for votes. Okay. However, it is said to affect the electoral governance and the fairness of the electoral process in India. This will be your introduction. And towards the body, we will be discussing about what are the arguments in favor of freebies. Of course, it is actually giving a lot of social welfare in terms of education, employment, food security, etc. And then helping in poverty alleviation as well as increasing the participation or the competitiveness below, between the political parties. And then there are also concerns like the fiscal burden causing creating this dependency syndrome, and then misallocation of resources, and thereby all this actually acts as a threat to electoral integrity. So this is the body. And finally, in order to curb this, we need to have a very transparent regulating mechanism. For example, you can strengthen the election commission in order to regulate or in order to revise the model code of conduct, just as the Supreme Court said. Then establish a committee, and then you need to conduct the voter awareness campaigns also, where you actually teach them about introspecting and analyzing the long-term economic as well as the social repercussions that these particular freebies will have. And that's where we compared, right, between the welfare schemes as well as the freebies. And finally, you need to say there have to be a balanced approach in ensuring the responsible welfare spending is crucial for the democratic integrity. So this is what is your answer. Now let us quickly solve the MCQs of the topics that were discussed, taken up in yesterday's DNA. So consider the following statements regarding the Regulation of Places of Worship Act. So Article 25 Clause 2 of the Constitution allows the state to regulate the secular activities of religious institutions. Yes, this is correct. Next one, the Tamil Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowment, that is HRNCE Act 1951. This governs temple administration in Tamil Nadu. Yes, this is correct. The Waqf Act of 1995 regulates the management of Hindu religious endowments. No, this is related to what? Waqf Act is related to Muslim religious endowments. Okay, so since statements 1 and 2 are correct, here your answer will be option A, 1 and 2. Now, let's go to the second one. What is the second one? Consider the following statements regarding the linkage of voter ID cards EPIC number with the Aadhaar. Okay, so the Election Laws Amendment Act 2021 provides statutory backing for the voluntary linkage of voter ID with Aadhaar. Yes, voluntary, correct. Aadhaar is legally proof of citizenship. No, even the Supreme Court said that no, it cannot be a proof of your citizenship. Okay, under the Aadhaar Act, no. The Supreme Court in case Puttaswamy case 2018 upheld the right to privacy as a fundamental right under Article 21, influencing the Aadhaar related policy. This is also correct. Since statement 1 and 3 are correct, here your answer will be option C. Okay. Now let's move forward. The third question, with reference to the Lokpal and Lokayuktas Act of 2013, consider the following. The selection committee for appointing the Lokpal includes the Chief Justice of India or a Supreme Court judge. Yes, this is correct. Next one, the jurisdiction of the Lokpal extends to all the decisions taken by the Prime Minister. No, it is not correct, because decisions which are related to national security, decisions related to that of your international relations, and other decisions are taken by the prime minister, which are taken by the prime minister, does not come under the purview of the Lokpal. Next one, so this is wrong. At least 50% of the members of the Lokpal should be from SCs, STs, OBCs, minorities or women. This is correct. So here also 1 and 3 are correct. Here option A will be your correct answer. So now let's move forward to see few of the questions which are actually picked up or framed with reference to the topics that we discussed today. First one, with respect to the Digital Data Protection Act of 2023. So whether it establishes regulatory authority or not. Next one talks about localization of all categories of personal data within India. Yes, this is also correct, right? So all this you need to know. That is, it depends upon with what concentration you heard or listened to today's lecture. So please solve all these on the website in order to have a better clarity on where you have actually gone wrong and why, and to also see the answers simultaneously. The next one, the link of this particular of our website is given actually in the comment section below. Next one, with respect to that of United Nations Convention Against Torture, when it was adopted, whether Article 3 prohibits extradition if there is a substantial risk in the receiving country. Yes, that is correct. And India has ratified this one as well as the optional protocol. No, it has not ratified. India has just signed it. Okay. So I'm just giving you a heads up here. The next article, the next MCQ is with reference to UAVs. So what is Rustum 2? What is Heron UAV? We actually saw, right, whether it is made by Hindustan Aeronautical Limited or it's imported from Israel. So you need to know that. Next is MQ-9 Reaper. This is acquired from the United States, primarily used for maritime surveillance. Yes, that is correct. So here most of it we have actually discussed. So you need to take this particular MCQ test on the website. So with this, we've actually come to the end of today's discussion of daily news analysis. So for more such interesting topics as well as interactive sessions and interactive live sessions, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you, and we will meet again soon in yet another live session.